hello, hello.
Sounds great.
Can you hear me now?
Great.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? That's okay. Can you hear me now? 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 Hello? the voice of all students. What we're doing here is we're coming together to create a unified voice for all students. My name is Mark Vieska. I'm the National Parliamentarian for COSGP and will be acting as speaker for the Nosc. At this point, I would like to recognize some of our distinguished guests that we have with us. We have Mr. Josh Prober, who is the AOA Legal Counsel. We have Dr. Mansour Jatoy, where'd he go? Back there, the current Student AOA Board of Trustees member. We have student doctor Bridget McAwee, who is the incoming AOA Student Board of Trustee member. We have Dr. Elizabeth Wiley, the AMSA president. We have student Dr. Sam Rabor, the SOMA president. We have student Dr. Caitlin Painter, who's not here. Oh, there she is. You're here. We also have, she is the SAO chair. We also have student Dr. Carissa Littman from NOVA. She is the representative for Omega Beta Iota, and she's going to talk for a minute or two on what that is. And if I could at this point just ask that everyone silence their cell phones, just so we don't have any interruptions. We have a lot to get through, so we're going to be kind of strict on things, but that's okay because the things we're going to talk about are very important. I'm going to first have Chris Lippman come up to speak to the council.
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to thank you for coming, and I think that all of us here are really interested in being representatives of our students and affecting change for our profession. And Omega Beta Iota is the Political Action Honor Society for all osteopathic students and physicians. So I really wanted to encourage you guys to be looking for applications for that. We're trying to really encourage more activism in the political arena as everything is changing, and I think that's why you guys are here right now. As far as political activism, we don't really slight to left or right or whatever you want to say. We just encourage you to be active in your community and in our nation politically. So I will be sending out applications later in the next couple months, so please be looking for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carissa. Next up, we have Mr. Josh Prober, the AOA Legal Counsel, who will be giving an introduction as to how the AOA House of Delegates runs, and I think he'll be open to answer a couple of questions afterwards.
So good evening, everyone. Welcome to Chicago. As introduced, I'm Josh Prober. I'm General Counsel for the Osteopathic Association. And the House of Delegates is the big event in my world for the AOA. This is the session at which policy is set for the AOA. This is the session at which the Constitution and bylaws of the AOA, the basic building blocks that I work with, can be amended, can be revised. And most importantly, this is the opportunity for me to really kind of escape what can be something of an echo chamber within the AOA, that you hear only from certain limited groups. You hear from the other people on AOA staff. I hear from a few members, and I hear from the Board of Trustees. And once in a while, you kind of get the sense that everything here is fine. And the House of Delegates is the opportunity to really hear from the broader audience of these are the concerns. This is what people are worried about. And as students, I think you have a whole set of unique concerns that may be addressed to your satisfaction right now or may not. And this is the opportunity to bring those voices forward and be heard. I think it's also important to note this is an opportunity that it can actually be meaningful. It is an opportunity to be a change agent. You know, as the Affordable Care Act was going forward, our Washington office, you'd hear discussions that they couldn't move without getting somebody upset. That they think that, well, you know, maybe this isn't the correct proposal. And then you'd hear from people on one side of the AOA saying, no, the AOA should get behind this. Or from some people, no, you know, this doesn't go far enough. We should go towards a single payer system. That's where the AOA should be advocating. or on the opposite end, that this is a disaster for medicine. This is the worst thing possible. Why are we doing this? And so as the Board of Trustees set about the decision about how do we proceed, where can we move with this, how can we present a position for the osteopathic profession, they went back to all the past policy statements from the past Houses of Delegates to see where is the official policy statement. And those were the basic building blocks that set about how the AOA would position itself. Could not act in violation of the policy set by the House, and more importantly, the policy set by the House could give good guidance to the board on what the basic viewpoint within the profession is. So that's an overview of why I think the House of Delegates is important for me and important for you. The other pieces about the House of Delegates, it's a big mix of different points, of different events. There's the policy-making side, very important to me and what I do with the AOA, very important to the Board of Trustees. But there's also a certain element of pageantry. There's, I think there's 503 delegates approved for this year. So you'll see the parade of DOs from all the different states in the country. You experience some of that national level of communication here, but I think you really get a sense for what a strong national organization is at the House of Delegates, as opposed to the more insular Board of Trustees sessions where you don't get that sense for affecting thousands of people. There's a lecture given on Saturday morning by one of the leaders of the profession. It gives a great sense of history of not just only what's coming in front of you today as students and as future physicians, but also a sense of how everyone got to be here, and particularly how the osteopathic profession evolved. So I always find that to be interesting in giving perspective. So with that sort of an overview of the House of Delegates and why it's important, I think there's kind of the question about what actually goes on. What is the House of Delegates? I belong to, I have a regular meeting with the general counsels of other national organizations, the National Association of Realtors, the American Veterinary Medicine Association, the AMA's General Counsel, the Dental Association, on down the line. Most of the associations are based in Chicago, and we meet about once every 3 months. One of the topics that will come up from time to time is how much many of them really hate their House of Delegates, that it's a difficult animal to control as an attorney, that policies can be set and you really don't get the opportunity to step in. I really find the opposite to be true, that it's the legislative body for the AOA. This is the opportunity to hear, and as I said before, sometimes the can be something of an echo chamber. And so this is the opportunity to really hear from all sides of the profession. It varies from year to year. Sometimes there's a very active House of Delegates, and you think, boy, there's all these resolutions, and we're never going to make it through this by the end. Somehow we always do. But sometimes, some years it's relatively quiet, and business wraps up early. I think it's usually more interesting when there's the active discussion. So I guess that's one of the points I urge you, is that it can be intimidating. There's hundreds of delegates in the room. And as students, you're not really certain. It's tempting to sort of sit back and listen rather than be more active and proactive and give your own message. But I'd encourage you to step forward, because I think you do have a unique message to bring, and there's certainly a lot going on that's affecting all of you. In terms of what to watch for, the basic process is fairly straightforward. You've seen the published resolutions. That's the business items to be acted on. Whole range of topics, from specific medical care issues to larger, more political questions, and larger profession-wide policy questions on educational issues, on a whole range of topics. The first day, they'll break off into reference committees. It's a more efficient way to get a sense for where different people stand on the different resolutions. I think you'll have an opportunity to either sit in as a member of the committee or certainly speak to the different resolutions in the reference committees. And there's a lot that happens there. And it's important for the voice to come forward in a reference committee. Otherwise, it's one of two chances you'll get. The first chance is in the reference committee to speak to an issue. The other chance is on the floor of the House. And in the reference committee, it's a lot easier to have your voice heard. There aren't as many opportunities for parliamentary maneuvering or for discussion to be closed off before you've had a time to speak to it. It's not as intimidating a session either. So the reference committee is an important opportunity to come forward and speak to an issue that you're interested in. After issues are discussed, the reference committee itself will deliberate an executive session and develop a reference committee report that has the recommendations of the committee. And that's, I think, one of the steps to watch for. The House tends to like to operate by consensus because there's so many resolutions that come forward. Most of the reference committees will try to come forward with a series of recommendations that they'll act on without any particular discussion, and that's called a consent agenda. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but if in fact you find that there's an issue on a consent agenda and you don't agree with the recommendation being made for consent action, it's important to step forward and ask that something be taken out of the consent agenda so that it can be reviewed and actually discussed on the whole floor of the House. Again, that can be a bit intimidating, but I think it's important for the voice to be heard. If everything rolls forward as consent, there's no sense given to the board, to the other delegates, that an issue may be more controversial than they believe it to be. If issues are taken off the consent agenda or individual resolutions come forward with specific amendments and recommendations from a committee, that's when you'll have an opportunity to speak to a specific issue. You'll be asked to come forward to the microphone, or you'll have the opportunity to come forward to the microphone and to make a basic statement about you support the resolution because of reasons X, Y, and Z, or you disagree with the resolution and think it should not be approved. And this is the process that I think is very informative to everyone to find out what the range of viewpoints is. It's, I would say it tends to be a very friendly House. If you get lost in what exactly the parliamentary action is, if you're discussing an amendment or an amendment on amendment, the Speaker will try to help you through the process. It's not there to close off discussion. It's very open to encouraging debate on the House and setting it into an organized format for discussion. The last couple things I'd note would be, in terms of the parliamentary traps, be very wary of a motion to refer if it's an issue that's important to you. It's basically, once a motion is made to refer it elsewhere, whether it's to the Board of Trustees or one of the board committees, or something else in the AOA's Bureau Council Committee infrastructure, the discussion at that point is only limited to the action to refer. Don't go to the substance of the issue. And if the action isn't, and if the motion is ultimately referred elsewhere, it forecloses the possibility of action on it during that during this year's House of Delegates. So I think that's a trap to be wary of. In terms of the parliamentary details, it tends to not be as rigorous as some other organizations. Again, it's a friendly speaker who wants to encourage debate and discussion, and it's not someone who's hostile and trying to move on with business before the close of the session. So those are some sort of thoughts and initial overviews of the House, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you have, whether it's about specific issues or about the whole House.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Let's give him a hand. All right, next up we have Dr. Mansour Jatoy, the outgoing Student AOA Board of Trustees member. Obviously, he's not a student anymore, but we're going to have him speak just a little bit and give you all some pointers.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sorjatoy. I'm the National Student Representative outgoing. Bridget's sitting over there. Can you raise your hand? She's our incoming National Student Representative on the Board of Trustees. And so kind of come to you today to highlight the importance of what you guys are doing, obviously on behalf of myself and on the board that I sit on. The work you do is, the opinions that you bring to the House of Delegates should not be taken very lightly at all. I'd like to start with a story about President Stowers. President-elect Stowers, soon to be President Stowers, was talking about how in just the last 4 or 5 years, the House has become an extremely friendly environment in the sense of the big states versus the United Federation of Small States and all the other states that exist. And that the board, for the first time in many years, that type of malignant behavior would ascend up the ranks and be the same at the board level. And I didn't see any of it this year. So to me, I just came in and assumed it had been this way for 100 years, and it hadn't been. And I can actually commend our COSGP and SOMA chairs as well, because they've been collaborating more so in these last 2 or 3 years than we have in, gosh, I think the 30 years of the COSGP's existence. So I guess almost 40 years of COSGP's existence. So I'd like to continue to commend our leadership for being very similar in that sense to the House of Delegates and the Board of Trustees, respectively. And our chairs and presidents can tell you, you can walk into that room, the boardroom, and you can see all the board members reading their newspapers, sifting through their iPads. But the moment that a student representative comes up to the mic, everyone stops and listens. They don't do that to Dr. Shannon. They don't do that with a whole slew of the other big leaders in the profession. And I guess the question is why? Because you guys, again, you guys are not the future, you guys are the now. By a show of hands, how many are state delegates on the House floor? Again, I've told the COSGP this before, and that's 1+ with SOMA seat as well. You are bigger than a small state. The combined voice that you guys are about to make right now are much bigger than a small state. And this is why, for the first time with COSGP and SOMA coming together, states are starting to realize we are worth talking to. And this happened last year, and it's happened the year before. They come and say, hey, can you guys go and talk to your state societies? We'll give you some education materials. Can you do it? Whereas we form resolutions and we'll ask SOMA, hey, can you guys help us out and let's see if we can get this resolved. One of them you're going to discuss today, and that's our sexual orientation one that we worked ever so hard. It's about 5 years of work in the progress, and we're about an inch away from the finish line. And I commend all of you for it. So why am I even talking to you, whereas we usually don't talk to you, is by a show of hands, who here is COSGP or SOMA? You guys are the 20,000 students. You are the voice of 20,000 osteopathic students right now. This is your one moment, and you may not get it again until you are a physician and enter the House. You are it. There is no reason to bicker. There's no reason for anything else. We have to come together, formulate an opinion, and I promise every single one of you I'll be there at the House. If one of you students stand up, every physician will look at you and be like, holy smokes, the student's about to talk. They're not used to seeing that. They're not used to you being well-versed. And we've been working very aggressively to become a political entity where people will listen. And they're doing it everywhere. So your incoming student representative on the Board of Trustees has already gotten a whole slew of great comments. She comes from CCOM. CCOM is very fond of Dr. Nichols. I've gotten a lot of praise as well, and all the ones before us. You should be very proud of the students that are around you. Do not sit and watch. Stand up. Speak your heart. Your heart is telling you, the 1,000 or so students that every one of you represent here in this room is telling you to stand up and speak. Don't be scared. Thank you so much. I'm going to commend you for all the work that you're going to do, and we'll let you guys do it. And today, again, we want you to fight. We want you guys to go up there and grapple through the topics. The board meetings, it's ridiculous. It goes back and forth. We're debating. But at the end of the day, everyone goes and gets drinks. So I went head on with this sexual orientation resolution with a couple of the board members. But by the evening, I sat next to him and thought it would be awkward. It wasn't. We just talked about our families and moved on. And this is how this body should be. But when we leave united. We leave as 20,000 students in the same direction regardless of what you feel. This is how it is here. This is how it is at the House. This is how it is at the board level. Thank you.
now that you've all been very well briefed on the House of Delegates and the amazing impact you can have, I'm going to give just a couple of logistics on how we're going to run the Nosc. We are going to use Robert's Rules of Order. Now, in saying that, I'm going to be quite strict on that, and it's not because I'm trying to be mean, it's because I'm trying to prepare you to, as Dr. Jatoy said, to speak on the floor and to sound versed in what we're doing. So if I stop you and make you repeat something, that's just because I'm trying to help you to be better. Okay, so don't be offended, don't get embarrassed. We're here to help and we're here to grow. One thing you'll note on your tracker sheets, that is not the order in which we're going to go through these resolutions because of time constraints. We want to hit the most important ones first. And with that said, I won't be entertaining motions to discuss a resolution. I will just bring it before the floor and we will discuss them. Each resolution will get 10 minutes unless someone moves to extend debate by a certain amount of time and it's seconded and then voted upon by everyone here. Each person will have 1 minute to speak, whether it's for or against, and we will rotate back and forth between fors and against on the resolutions. When you do stand up to speak, I ask that you do come to the mics, and what I need you to start out saying is your name, your school, what organization you're with, and then whether or not you rise in support or you rise in opposition to the resolution, just so everyone here knows what you're talking about when you're talking. With respects to amendments, it gets a little difficult for us because if we amend a bill here and we try to amend it in the House of Delegates and it fails in the House of Delegates, we then don't have a stance on the bill as it stands. So I do ask that if you're making an amendment, that it be something very substantial and not just little nitpicky things, but do feel free to make amendments. And if an amendment is made and approved by the council, what we will also do is then go back and we will vote on the resolution as it stands. So that way, if the amendment does not pass in the House of Delegates, we still have a stance as a student voice on the original resolution also. Okay? Let me see if I have any other. Just a quick rundown on parliamentary procedure. If you have a question, what you'll do is you'll just yell out in your seat that you have a point of inquiry. Okay, and then you'll come up to the mic and you'll just walk past the line of people that are going to be at the mic and you'll state your question. And that is a question. So point of inquiry is a question. But if you have information to offer the council, you would say point of information, come up to the mic, say your name, your school, your organization, and then you'll state what you have to say. When we start debating on a resolution, as I was alluding to, I ask that people come up and stand behind the mics in a line. That'll just facilitate discussion, keep it moving, and we'll see how it goes. All right, and are there any really quick questions, because we have a lot to get to and very little time. All right. Well, this time, I bring to the floor for your consideration Resolution H500, the amendment to the American Osteopathic Association's Code of Ethics to include sexual orientation and gender identity.
Scott Drew, Torrey University, California, College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I rise in favor of this amendment. I think that
you rise in favor of this resolution.
Resolution. Thank you. I feel that as a body of physicians, our job is to treat the patient however they present themselves, and it's as simple as that. And I feel like we all can agree on this amendment. Thank you.
Any opposed?
Call the question. James Tucker, NTSU KC1.
Having the question called, all those in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution passes. From here on out, I do ask that you allow me to call the question in order to facilitate debate so we can actually debate these issues. All right. At this point, I bring to the floor for your consideration the New Jersey resolution. Just as a point of information, this resolution is not a resolution at this point because it was a late submission to the House. It has to go to the Rules Committee to be considered. However, it is a very important resolution, and at this point we don't foresee it being rejected by the Rules Committee, so we are going to discuss it because it pertains to us. So at this point, I open up debate to the floor.
I move to accept the resolution.
Please come to the mic so everyone can hear you.
This resolution is in response to the merger which will be taking place with our school merging with Rowan University, and this is a concern for our school because we're not really sure how this is going to impact our accreditation, our research, our mission, our tuition, and the name of our school. The other day we did vote on this here at COSGP, and it was passed unanimously by the entire council. And if we could get your support on this as an entire student population that supports this, it would mean a lot to our students. So I really hope that you guys vote in favor for this.
Any opposed to the resolution?
Bill Lancaster, Georgia PCOM. Point of inquiry, are we not supposed to second proposed approval?
No, I am bringing resolutions to the floor in order to move things along quickly as opposed to having to go through the whole procedure of doing that. Anyone else for the resolution?
Robert Jesse Maria, UMD&J SOM.
Go up to the mic, please. And please say your name and your school and to the mic.
Robert Jessamaria, UMD&J SOM. So this resolution is damage control politically. It should be known that this resolution here needs to be passed, not because it's something that was a first choice. Our school is probably the victim of a misunderstanding. If you read the whole reorganization of this whole thing, you'll notice that they actually think it's a good thing to have osteopathic and allopathic under the same name. And they totally misunderstand the osteopathic principles and how they differ from medicine and how they are just as important. So take this resolution as a lesson that can happen anywhere. Thank you.
Anyone against the resolution? For the resolution? Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of passing this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution is passed. At this point, I bring to the floor for your consideration House Resolution 205, the Osteopathic Director of Medical Education resolution. The floor is now open to debate.
Chris Damon, ACSB Comms. I move to approve this resolution, however, I speak in opposition. I think as in the osteopathic community, we find a lot to be accepted into other people's programs. However, it seems we also close the door to other people. I think in most instances, it would be best to have a DO as a Director of Medical Education or osteopathic school, but there may be instances where somebody else is better. I think it's better to judge somebody by merit, not by the letters behind their name. I know MDs who think of themselves as DOs at heart, And I think by supporting a resolution such as this, we would be further driving forward that. We can't spread our philosophy of being osteopathic physicians by closing our doors. Thank you.
Anyone for the resolution?
Erin Murphy, A.T. Still University, School of Osteopathic Medicine in Arizona, SOMA, Student Osteopathic Medical Association. I rise in favor of this resolution. It's really just stating that we want the AOA to already adhere to a policy they've created. So we're just trying to reinforce that. That's what it says in line 20, just to adhere to the policy that's already created. So we're just really reinforcing that, again, on its merit. So thank you.
Opposed to the resolution?
Kevin Cope, LMU Comps, COSGP. I am opposed to this resolution as well. I'm from the Southeast. I go to LMU. I'm from the state of Tennessee. There are new schools in Mississippi. There's going to be a new school in Alabama. There's PCOM Georgia is a newer school as well. And in order to create residency programs down in the Southeast, we don't have many DOs down there. And when we start creating residency programs, we're going to have to find people to run those residency programs. There's still going to be osteopathic residency programs, but I don't see anything wrong with an MD running those residency programs. We all know the crunch with osteopathic medical students compared with the number of GME slots on the osteopathic side. We don't have enough, and this limits the ability to create more residency programs for us.
James Tucker, ATSU, KCOM. I rise in support of this bill. Currently, the practice of duly accredited residencies in the United States, when the AOA duly accredits, we require a DO to be there in order to ensure that the standards and methods that we wish and we believe in, those core competencies of being a DO, are upheld. When there are currently individuals who are physicians who are employed in this direct position, that their jobs would be in jeopardy if we do not approve this. Individuals who have been hired as osteopathic directors of medical education at duly accredited facilities, every one of their jobs would be in jeopardy if we deny this bill. I don't think that's in the best interest of our students, and I don't think that's in the best interest of our profession.
Douglas Anderson, PCOM, COSGP. I rise in opposition to this resolution. I believe that, especially in the issue of residencies, specifically highly competitive residencies, where the number of DOs is incredibly limited, I think there is a very large benefit in having MDs be able to come in. I also believe that when it comes to core competencies and the DO philosophy, I believe that many MDs are able to incorporate that into their own practice, and I feel that many MDs actually don't realize that until they begin to practice or until they're already in school and they realize that they're really much more DO-minded. The fact that we have MDs that teach us academically at our institutions, and the fact that they are able to teach us in the clinics, on rotations, and in residency already, I think we should not limit them from being able to further manage us as a director of graduate medical education. Thank you.
Our secretary is asking that you slow down when you speak just a little bit so she can record it all. Thank you.
Hi. Hope Harris, still Imperial University College of Osteopathic Medicine on behalf of SOMA. I speak in favor of this resolution. Coming from Mississippi, from an area where there is, a DO shortage, I believe that we need to uphold and affirm the policy that the AOA already has with having DOs in this position to oversee us. Just in that, I understand what people are saying about MDs, but having a DO is going to be sensitive to issues in osteopathic medicine that may not be on the radar of MDs. So I think it's important that we just uphold this policy that the AOA has in place.
Sarah Wolf, Western University of Health Science, CSOGP. I rise in opposition to this. Just because a policy stands doesn't mean that it's right. There are several policies that have been changed over time. as in Resolution 500 that we stand to talk about later today, that's changing the wording and including things that have not been included in the past. It doesn't mean that that resolution is right as it stands just because it stands today. I also think that you really need to think about driving a wedge between us and the MD community. There's a lot going on there right now, and I think the last thing that we want to do is separate ourselves anymore. They're being inclusive to us. We need to be inclusive to them. There are also parts of the country where maybe there aren't a lot of DOs. I'm from Oregon. There are not a lot of DOs there. In finding someone to establish residencies, do you want to take a crappier DO rather than a better professor who's an MD? That's something you need to think about.
Bill Lancaster, Georgia PCOM, COSGP. We were actually informed yesterday when we discussed this that this is actually quite a new ruling. So the line 20 where it says to continue to adhere to this policy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm aware that it's under a 7-year, it's not 7 years old, I think it's 5 years ago that they changed this. Am I wrong?
If you have a question, you need to say point of inquiry.
How old is this continuation of this policy?
From our understanding, it's about 5 years.
Thank you.
Patrick Kraft, WVSOM, COSGP. I'm staying in opposition to the resolution. I kind of reiterate what everybody's been saying about the osteopathic training. I don't necessarily think that just because you are an allopathic trained physician, you can go to an osteopathic school, stay for 5, 6, 7 years, and really, I know there's a number of professors at our school that really embrace osteopathic philosophy. And I know that from some of the osteopathic physicians that I've met out in practice, they don't necessarily, just because they have the DO doesn't mean they embrace osteopathic philosophy. So I just want to draw that to you guys' attention, and hope that makes sense.
Point of order. Just want to mention to the caucus here that comments should be addressed to the chair when they're speaking in front of the caucus. That they shouldn't address other members. That those comments be addressed to the chair.
You are correct, sir. Hearing no further debate, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Sarah Hughes, Des Moines University.
I've already called the question.
Point of order.
I have to, well, if it's a point of order, you can just yell that out, point of order. Okay. Then I have called the question, and all those in favor of passing this resolution say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The nays have it. The resolution does not pass. I now bring before the caucus House Resolution H206, Liaison Committee on Medical Education, Student Admissions to American Osteopathic Association Residencies. At this time, I will also read the resolved statement so everyone knows what we're talking about. Resolved that the American Osteopathic Association allow Liaison Committee on Medical Education graduates participate in new AOA residency and fellowship training and become eligible to take that residency's corresponding certifying AOA board with AOA membership. And be it further resolved that the AOA assure the revised residency and fellowship standards retain osteopathic autonomy, such as maintaining the 7 core competencies to include osteopathic manipulative principles and practices and an osteopathic program director. And be it further resolved that current AOA accredited residency or fellowship programs are exempt from any standards allowing participation of LCME graduates. Floor is now open to debate.
James Tucker, ATSU KCOM. I move that we amend resolution number H206.
Do I have a oh, go ahead.
Okay, beginning in line 8 with the word and then concluding before and be it further on line 9. So that would basically say that they are, I'll wait for a second.
Go ahead and finish off.
So the reason behind it, so it needs to still say and be it further correct, but the reason that I state this is I think that this is a little bit overreaching.
So what are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to strike that?
Strike that
resolution? Okay. Yeah. Okay. 1 second. Do I have a second?
Douglas Anderson, PCOM, COSGP, second that.
All right. The floor is now open to debate.
The basis for this striking, if you look at the whole resolution, I believe that it is the right direction to go. I believe that it does begin the approval of duly accredited residencies that start out with the AOA involved as opposed to the ACGME. But I do believe at the same time that as an organization, as we spoke about earlier today in COSGP, we have our own private licensing association. We have our own organization for the reason that we are taught and trained the osteopathic philosophy. That doesn't mean necessarily that the allopathic counterparts would gain that exact same training in a residency time frame. I think it's best to maintain our own licensing and our own certification, but this would allow that duly accredited residency. Thank you.
Opposed to the resolution? Sorry, the amendment. Anyone for the amendment? Hearing no further debate on the amendment, all those in favor of amending this resolution say aye. Aye. All those opposed to amending this resolution say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The amendment does not stand. We're now back to discussing this resolution.
Brian Losinski, LECOM, SOMA. I stand in opposition to this bill because I don't believe that in the course of the residency that an allopathic student will necessarily be able to understand and complete 7 core competencies. If they come in without knowing any osteopathic manipulative abilities, how would they be able to provide that to their patients as you should in residency? Because of that, I feel we would either need to amend this bill somehow or just strike it outright.
Anyone to speak for the resolution?
Douglas Anderson, PCOM, COSGP. I rise in opposition. I believe that this is an important step for our profession to allow, basically this is just saying MD graduates are able to do an AOA residency. I believe that in the wording here, it makes it very clear that the 7 core competencies and all the standards for a osteopathic physician be upheld. And I think that MDs who develop a osteopathic philosophy in medical school or want to pursue an osteopathic career be allowed to. I feel that we are granted the exact same privilege in the allopathic world, and I believe that they deserve the same from ours.
So are you for or against the resolution? You spoke for the resolution, but
I'm
you said
for
you're
the
against.
resolution. I apologize.
Lauren Snyder, ASCOM, COSGP. I rise in opposition of this resolution as it stands. It came up in our discussion within the past couple days at our COSGP that our job as student representatives is to represent student bodies and obviously all of the students at our respective schools. If we let our allopathic colleagues into our residency spots at this moment, I feel like we might take away some of the spots that are in some of the more competitive residency spots, for example, in the different specialties of medicine.
And as as osteopathic physicians, student physicians, I feel like these spots are really important for those students who are interested in those areas of medicine. So we really need to hold on to those until a point maybe later when we're on a bit more of an even playing ground. So at this time, I feel like it's not appropriate. Thank you.
Any for the resolution?
Elise Julian, NSU Com, COSGP. I am for the resolution. I think that, well, for multiple things. One, we take advantage of their residencies, and I am afraid with all the new policy changes that are going on right now, I'm afraid if we don't make this little step towards them, that they're going to flat out take away the opportunity for us to do fellowships after us going into just our residencies, which would pretty much limit us pretty severely. Like, let's say we go into internal medicine or we go into whatever we go into. If we aren't able to then cross over afterwards, that's kind of terrifying. I mean, how many of you guys honestly know right now exactly what you want to do, without a doubt? So that's something you want to think about. And I think the other standpoint on it is that actually, I'm just going to leave it at that. So just going to leave it there. Tara Hughes, Des Moines University College of Osteopathic Medicine. I represent COSGP, or I speak on behalf of COSGP. I rise in opposition to this resolution. Just as someone said, I do feel like this would not be the best position to take for our students who may want to go in more competitive residencies. I think we all know that if you want to go into family practice, if you want to go into internal medicine, for the most part, we are on an even playing field, but there's still bias, even though it may not be on paper in some of those competitive specialties. Another thing is, I don't know, again, talking about a level playing field, a lot of our schools, we're not as heavy into research. Maybe we haven't had as many opportunities because of the school that we come from to have a super heavy research background or to interact in such a way at huge academic centers. So I feel like our AOA programs give us a way to use our tools and practice what we've been taught in our schools. Another thing is that if you look at line 14, it states that only the new accredited residency and fellowships will be open to LCME graduates. Now, this is a reason why I'm in opposition mainly, is because it's not fair.
Point of inquiry. Come up to the mic. Mike Erickson, Turtle College of Osteopathic Medicine, New York, Harlem, COSGP. My question is, it says here, as long as we're upholding the 7 core competencies, I was wondering if the board could sort of inform us as to how that training would be provided to a student that might not have those, particularly those competencies enforced in the preclinical and clinical years before residency. So what's sort of the plan to uphold those competencies?
I move to extend the debate by 5 minutes.
1 sec, let me take the question first, and then we'll do that. At this point, this is a new resolution that's being created, so this resolution would then cause people to create those systems. As of right now, from my understanding, those are not in place, so they would have to be created. All right.
Larry Carpio, everybody, College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I move to extend the debate by 5 minutes.
Mike Erickson, Turtle College of Osteopathic Medicine, Harlem, New York. I second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The debate is extended by 5 minutes. Point of inquiry.
Jeremiah Carrs, NLO for the chapter, WVSN chapter summit. Do they have to take comments if the MDs are applying to an AOA program? That's my question. If they. Cool.
Sally Matthews, COSGP Chair. This resolution as it stands is just a starting point. So with this resolution, we determine whether or not we will open up our residencies. The next step will be to define what is equivalent in our training. So the next step will be how much training do MD students need in order for them to even be applicants to our osteopathic residencies. So I hope that helps to clarify.
Matthew Tick, KCUMB, College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I rise in support of this resolution. This comes down to an issue of fairness. We participate in ACGME residencies very often. By not allowing our allopathic colleagues to join our residency programs completely weakens our resolve and argument for equality in the profession. I believe in the fierce urgency of now. Right now, we're squaring up ACGME. This is not the time to be driving a wedge between our two camps. We need to be united. We need to welcome our colleagues. I hope my colleagues here will join me in support of this measure.
Larry Carpio, Edward by College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I speak in against this resolution. We talk about equality here, and honestly, we're not equal to our allopathic counterparts. You know, we have more training in manipulative medicine. We have all this other training. I mean, you have to even that playing field before we can even think about making this resolution go in place. Also, just to think about that, we have around 5,000 to 6,000 people graduating from osteopathic schools, and we only have about 3,000, roughly 3,000 residencies, while the allopathic people have 9,000 surplus residencies. So at this point, we don't have the spots necessary to cover our own people, much less, add the allopathic people to come into our residencies. Just something to think about. Thank you.
One of quick.
Dr. Genoy, can you elaborate on how many medical students there are and how many current residencies that the AOA has in the case that we might lose ACGME or go the opposite direction of the ACGME? Thank you. State how many residency spots we have compared to students. Would you be privy to that information?
We are under by, I think, 1,500 to 2,000. So I think we're somewhere in the vicinity of 2,500 to 3,000 residency spots. I think we're graduating for 5,000 somewhere.
Mike Erickson, Federal College of Osteopathic Medicine, Harlem, New York, rise in support of this resolution. This is basically opening the door and opening the talks of having a crossover, again, between MDs and DOs. And the training is different and the philosophies are different, but we're showing more and more as time goes on that we're willing to learn about each other and incorporate the philosophies that best work for the reason that we're here, the patients. So we talked about earlier about the requirements, since MDs and DOs do have different training, that's something we can discuss later on in terms of what the requirements would be, but to sort of set it off and start these talks, I think that this resolution is important in order to do that. Thank you.
Move to extend the discussion by 5 minutes. Robert Jesse Maria, UMD and JSOM, Selma.
Douglas Anderson, PCOM, second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We will add 5 minutes. Give us 1 second.
Robert Jesse Maria, GES, not a J, GESUMARIA.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm against this resolution, not because I don't think anybody in this room agrees that a person who decides to go into an MD spot or anything like that is any less qualified to do anything that we're doing right now. We have the same qualifications going in, and we are, equal in terms of medical care in today's day and age. I mean, back in the day when, antibiotics weren't known, there was a big difference, but now we're not. So this shouldn't be a discussion about MDs or DOs, who's inferior, who's superior. It's not really an issue. What should be an issue here is, like fighting for oil, we're fighting for residency spots. DOs have never really had the system where we have had enough residency spots for our graduates. We've always depended on a certain percentage coming from the MD side. If we let them into our residency spots, not because they're any less qualified, literally it's just survival mode at this point. We need enough residency spots for our graduates, and if we make it too competitive, unfortunately, we're the ones who would fall out on the shorter stick, just due to numbers. That's time.
Molly Schneider, DMU Com, COSGP. I rise in support of this resolution. Pre-med students come to medical school in all walks of life. A lot of times they are not well versed in the difference between DO and MD, and some do not even know that DO schools exist. And I would be sorely disappointed if an MD student graduated and wanted to be trained in osteopathic tenants and was not allowed to because of a resolution such as this not being passed, as I think we need to continue to focus on patient outcomes, and the more osteopathically trained physicians that we can get working on our nation's healthcare, the better. Thank you.
Bridget McElwee, Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, SOMA. I rise in opposition to this resolution. There's a lot of talk about equality right now, and I think the point that a lot of us are missing is that with respect to the type of medicine practiced in ACGME residencies, we are equivalent to MD students. With the type of medicine, which is osteopathic medicine practiced in AOA accredited residencies, allopathic students do not receive the same type of training. So in that respect, for us to say that students from allopathic schools could come into an AOA residency and perform equivalently is not really accurate. And furthermore, the AOA has stated that there are our core competencies which the allopathic residencies have no equivalent to. They can't measure core competencies like we do, and I believe Dr. Levine has said that they could not even put a similar program into practice within the next 5 years. So for us to say or even assume that they could be equivalent to us in that respect is inaccurate. Thank you.
Elise Julian, NSU Com, COSGP. Point of information, there are currently many MD residencies who just do not take DO students. We all know that. This is not saying that each individual residency would have to take MD students. It just says that, hey, we're extending the olive branch. We as a group would allow it. It doesn't mean that each hospital has to. They can make their own decisions. So just because we're doing this, we're just leaving that open. We're saying we want to be together, and then leave it up to each one of the residency directors to say, you know what, I don't want an MD student, or I do.
Jessica Rimkus, Lecom Bradenton, COSGP. I stand in opposition to this resolution because I believe, as it stands, this resolution is lacking information in order to for us to make an educated decision. I believe that if there was more resolve as to how we would go about this, I believe that that needs to come first before we are willing to approve this resolution. So I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think that there are a lot of kinks that need to be worked out before we as students and we as an AOA can approve this this resolution and take a final stance on this matter. Thank you. Tara Hughes, Des Moines University College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I'd just like to finish what I was saying earlier. If you look at line 14, it states that the current AOA accredited residencies would be exempt from taking LCME graduates. So basically that line says some can take LCME grads, some can't. I kind of think that already puts up a front that we're just wishy-washy on the subject. I'd like to point out that we are about 2,000 residencies short for our own students. So we really need to think about that. So if we're growing our residencies, we need them as well. And then yesterday during our COSGP talk, someone did mention that
if this happened, we really need to think about putting our matches together. And I actually think that that would help maybe alleviate some of the stress if we did move forward in the future with a resolution like this. Thank you.
At this point,
Point of information, just so you guys know, at least in the state of Missouri and a number of other states, there are anti-discrimination laws that include as well the discrimination between a DO and an MD. You could not discriminate in choice by your DME whether you are actually going to select an MD or a DO. I think that's an important fact that the lady before me brought up that was incorrect. They will not be able to select, or they will be breaking the law. Thank you.
James Tucker, sorry, ATSU.
time having expired, I will call the question. All those in favor of passing this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to passing this resolution, please say nay. Nay. Division in the House. All right, so what we're going to do, all those in favor of this resolution, I need you to raise your hands high and keep them up until we tell you to take them down. Nope, anyone is allowed to vote in this. Any and every person. Yeah. This is in favor of the resolution. Keep your hands really high. They're going to get tired, but we need them to step back. Please keep them high.
Put our hands down.
All right, go ahead and put them down. All those opposed to this resolution, please put your hands up.
Point of inquiry. Are we also counting the online participants as well?
That's what we're looking for.
Thank you very much.
One last thing, those that have abstained, please raise your hand. Abstain from voting means you did not vote. Okay. All right.
Point of information, you guys are aware we lost some people in that, so your count of the abstain, maybe, right, we lost several people left.
then they're not a part of the vote. At this point, the nays have it. The resolution is rejected. Come up to the mic.
Brian Lisinski, Lecom Seton Hill, Soma. Can we get the vote count?
Yeas were 44, nays 62, with 9 abstaining.
Point of inquiry, Mark McPherson, ASCOM, SGA Secretary. Were the YouTube votes counted as well, or they?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
At this point, I bring to the floor House Resolution H401, promotion for the requirement of all sporting events to have access to an automated external defibrillator to prevent commotio cordis, providing medical care in areas of, well, never mind, promotion for the requirement of all sporting events to have access to an automated external defibrillator to prevent that word. Resolved that the American Osteopathic Association encourages national legislation to require the professional athletic programs, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, the National Federation of State High School Associations, and local sporting organizations to have a readily accessible automated external defibrillator that has been annually tested. I'll now open the floor to debate.
Shunman Liu, ASCOM, COSGP. I speak in favor of this resolution. I feel from personal experience that regardless of whatever obstacles may stand in the way of this provision, be it money or access or inconvenience in general, the possibility of saving a human life, I feel, supersedes all of those possible hindrances.
Anyone against this resolution? Anyone for the resolution? Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of passing this resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution passes. At this point, I bring to the floor for discussion House Resolution 410, providing medical care in areas of active conflict. Oh, yeah. I will read the result at this time. The Do Care International will not sponsor medical missions where the mission would be asked to withhold care from individuals based on political or religious beliefs, and to be it further resolved that Do Care International will not sanction activities or missions where mission participants report to a mission director who is not a healthcare related and doesn't have patient care as their primary goals. The floor is open for debate.
James Tucker, ATSU KCOM. I move to amend the motion. If we take a look at line 13, starting with the word "the" and replacing it with "there exists a recent history or current reasonable expectation that the." I can repeat that for you.
Yeah, please repeat it again.
Can we pause the time as well?
No.
Point of order. When we're discussing a resolution, does the time not stop?
No.
Okay. Line 14, at the very start, before the word "the," insert, "there exists a recent history or current reasonable expectation that the."
Please start again.
There exists a recent history or current reasonable expectation that the.
and also include after political the word ideologies.
And now at this point, we will pause so we can clean that up a bit. All right. So where are the errors that he needs to fix?
That looks correct.
Read it real quick. No, read that.
I'll read the whole statement.
No, you read that and tell us if that's what you want as your amendment.
Okay, at the end of line 13, remove the word the, and then change the word exist to pluralized exists, and then you have a duplicate A. Or instead of, and that would be it.
Replace this of right here with or. Okay, is that correct?
Looks to be so. Yeah, expectation. Sorry, singular expectation. On line 14.
Okay, while he's doing that, is there a second to this motion to amend?
Point of inquiry, can you read the amendment as changed? Kind of confusing the way.
Resolved that DoCare International will not sponsor medical missions where there exists a recent history or current reasonable expectation that the mission would be asked to withhold care from individuals based on political ideologies or religious beliefs. Is there a second? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. All those opposed to the amendment, please say nay. Discussion.
That would be great. Okay, the basis of this explanation, we have a number of missions that go to third world countries, and with the changing political climate, something that may have happened in the recent or near future should not, or changes in the political climate, do not necessarily necessitate the fact that there is a threat to our international mission. The point being that if we excluded every third world country or place where there has been a conflict in the past, as I believe it originally stated, without this amendment, that we would not be able to serve anyone with DoCare International. I know personally at ATSU KCOM, one of our OTM faculty goes annually to Afghanistan to provide services. There's neither of those two things, a recent history or current reasonable expectation that this would happen. I also think that the word ideologies clarifies a little bit. Thank you.
Those opposed to the amendment?
Amber Hull.
Okay.
Danielle Mangholz, PCLM, COSGP. Are we allowed to ask the writer of the resolution to further explain what that means if we possibly disagree with interpretations?
That would be appropriate. Is the writer of the resolution here? And the writer of the resolution? Sure. You can say a point of information and offer up information.
A point of information, Sally Matthews, USGB Chair. The reason for the writing of this resolution is that in past years, mission trips that have been gone on, the actual reason for those mission trips may have a political agenda. So that is why this resolution is being written. For example, a mission trip to Afghanistan was actually to find Osama bin Laden. And so that mission trip was a front for another political desire. And that is what this resolution is addressing.
Kevin Cope, LMU DCOM, COSGP. Point of information for just SOMA people that are here. Dr. Samet is the author of this resolution, and the example that he gave in our discussion was they planned a mission trip to somewhere, and I can't remember where it was. But he said that before they went, the government had told them, we're going to report that you've done this, 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 and this before they've even gone. So it's kind of like fraudulizing. So that was his reason for writing this resolution. So just information.
Amber Hull, COSGP, National Representative for Global Health. I rise in opposition to this amendment. I think it's really, in this case, it's unnecessary. If you look at the situation in Libya, that's a recent history of political conflict, and yet that country is in the process of rebuilding its healthcare system. I think our physicians have an opportunity to go in there and consult with the new government of Libya and begin to implement the osteopathic model in their future healthcare system. And so I think that this language could potentially undermine missions such as that, and I don't think that it adds anything to the original resolution.
Have you already spoken on this amendment? Either of you? No?
I had a point of inquiry.
Oh, go for it. Just yell out point of inquiry, and then you go straight to the
I
mic.
did before. Am I still allowed to speak on this?
Yeah.
But I'm in opposition.
Do we have any for? Okay, opposition.
Danielle Mayholtz, PCLM, COSGP. I speak in opposition to this amendment because I feel that the amendment is possibly doing what it was created to prevent. I feel that if you change the wording, it's almost kind of saying that if there is a political change, then that could be reasonable belief or a reason to prevent a mission trip there, even if that's not the point of the mission trip. I feel like originally it was just saying in general if something occurs, even while you're on the trip before it happens, it doesn't necessarily need to have a history. Even in the example that Dr. Samet had given, that didn't have a history or of why that would have been happening. I just feel like this amendment kind of is causing what it's preventing, I guess. Thank you.
Any for the resolution? You can't speak again until everyone has had a chance to speak.
Even if there's no one else for?
Even if there's no one for.
Are we talking about the amendment?
We are talking about the amendment at this time. Is there anyone else for the amendment? Is there anyone else against the amendment?
Just 30 seconds to clarify here. James Tucker, ATSU, KCOM. I'll try to keep this short and then we can extend debate if necessary. But the point of what I was doing was trying to prevent this from actually affecting those good mission trips like we talked about in Libya. Looking at more recent and very pertinent information because of the instability of those countries. 1 week to 1 week, we don't want to hesitate when we have that opportunity to go into that country and fix what's wrong. The purpose of me doing this was not in lack of support or anything like that. It was to actually clarify why we would not go in there because it was very vague in the beginning, I felt. That's all I have to say.
Hearing no further debate on this amendment, I call the question. If you are in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed to this amendment, say nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. The amendment does not stand. We will now move back to discussion of the original resolution.
I move to extend the discussion by 5 minutes.
Is there a second? And I need you to come up to the mic and say your name and school.
Edward Via, College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I move to extend the time by 5 minutes.
Is there a second?
PCLM, I second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. We will extend debate by 5 minutes.
Alice Chen, ATSU SOMA, speaking on behalf of SOMA. I'm speaking in support of this resolution. A primary goal of healthcare providers is to promote the health of our patients, and whether domestic or abroad, I believe that should be maintained regardless of patient-provider differences. Therefore, it makes sense that in the second resolve statement where mission participants report to a mission director who also has the same goal in mind, I feel is very important. So I speak in favor. Thank you.
Any opposed to the resolution?
Shinbanleo Ascom, speaking from COSGP. I speak in opposition to this because I feel that the two resolve statements from 13 to 15 and then from 16 to 18 address two separate issues. I feel that the resolve statement from 13 to 15 is indeed a provision in order to protect the people, in order to make sure that healthcare is not being used in exchange for any other sort of services, whereas the resolution from 16 to 18 is a different issue where it's essentially more so an issue of chain of command. And in certain places where there might not be enough healthcare-related people who would want to go, so for example, dangerous areas, there may be situations in which only people who are non-healthcare are willing to lead a medical mission to those areas.
Any for the resolution?
Amber Hall, COSGP, National Representative for Global Health. I'm speaking in favor of this amendment.
Of the amendment?
I'm sorry, of the resolution. When our doctors go into areas to serve on mission trips, it is their safety should not be called into question, and the safety of their patients shouldn't be called into question by the political turmoil in an area of active conflict. Although the need is great in those locations, this is something that the author of the resolution is a part of DoCare International and has been for many years. I think that we, as a governing body of the students who has been supported by DoCare International in our efforts to grow in global health and represent students in global health, I think that we should support this resolution and stand behind them. Thank you.
Any opposed? For the resolution.
Carissa Littman, NSUCOM. Can I move to extend the discussion by 5 minutes? Because I did want to entertain an amendment that would hopefully be in the spirit of the resolution.
At this point, I will not entertain a motion to amend this resolution due to time constraints to get through the rest of the resolutions that we need to
It's a little
discuss.
fast. As someone who's really involved with mission work, I fully support this resolution, the spirit of the resolution. However, I do have an issue, as my colleagues spoke about, with lines 16 through 18, as many times you have to take in cultural issues when you do involve yourself with mission work, because a lot of times the culture of a certain country or an area will be centered around a church or a place of worship, and there's certain, for example, our school went to Haiti, and the only way to get into the mountainous regions of this country was to go through a church. We weren't there at all with a religious arm or at all. We were just using their churches. So I feel like 16 through 18 would actually limit us. We don't have to work for their goals, but to partner with them, I feel, to strike that as not being something that we can entertain, I feel like that would actually inhibit the mission work.
So you're in opposition to this?
I wanted to amend it to strike that out.
But as it stands, you're opposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Point of inquiry.
Danielle Mayholtz, PCLM. I've never done a medical mission trip, but I've done ones with undergrad where the mission director didn't actually have to attend the trip. They helped to plan it, and then they worked with people in the area. For this example, would the mission director have to be in attendance, or would they be able to facilitate the trip and then remain in contact with people in the area during the trip? Does anybody know?
Based on the results statement, it's just the director himself doesn't say whether or not he has to be there or back home.
Okay, thank you.
Robert Jessa Maria, UMD&J SOM, SOMA. I'm for this resolution on 16 to 18. To me, healthcare related is a very broad term, and even if it is a case where it's a priest or somebody that we in this culture wouldn't consider a doctor or anything like that, healthcare related and patient care as the primary goal can be a lot of different people, and they can be program directors. They don't have to be medical as we see it. So therefore, I don't see any conflict.
Time having expired, I will call the question. All those in favor of passing this resolution, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The ayes have it. The resolution passes.
I now bring to the floor for your discussion House Resolution H201, ensuring that graduate medical education programs continue to select residents based on merit. Resolved that the American Osteopathic Association work with the American Medical Association, the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine, the Association of American Medical Colleges, and other U.S. stakeholders to ensure that U.S.-based graduate medical education programs maintain their ability to select residents based on merit. Now open to the floor for discussion. Anyone for this resolution?
Brian Losinski, LECOM, Seton Hill Campus, SOMA. Based upon my reading of this bill, I stand for it. It basically, to my interpretation, is we're going to accept students based upon what they know, what they can do, what their skills are, rather than other relationships, be they financial or personal relationships. Because of that, I feel that's the goal of both HCGME and the AOA to further the students that have more knowledge, have more skills, have all the qualities that we want in a position, rather than having the right connections.
Point of inquiry is Matt Danley, TCOM, SOM, or SOMA. Is the author of this resolution available to give us the spirit of why this was written? This all seems very self-explanatory and obvious to me. So I was wondering why we're discussing this now as opposed to just this is the way it is.
Is the author of this resolution here? No. As to that point, since the author of the resolution is not here, I would suggest reading the whereas statements.
Point of information, Brendan Williams, LMU DCOM. The goal of this was that certain schools, be it Caribbean, international, even U.S. for-profit schools, were buying hospitals as a whole, and therefore their students seem to get more selection into those residencies. So this is trying to say that you cannot select your student based on the corporation that owns your hospital, and then you must select based on merit alone. So it's just separating, whether it be financial or any other kind of agreement, non-financial, to just separate that out from this is an applicant, this is what they've done, this is who they are, select them on that instead of where they went to school.
Point of information, Jessica Rimkus, Lecom Bradenton, COSGP. Just to add to what he said, Dr. Smet talked to us a little bit about this yesterday in COSGP, and pretty much what he's saying is not that they're buying the residency positions, they're buying or purchasing the clerkship positions, the clinical positions for their medical students for a whole hospital, and that hospital then only has a pool of their doctor or their student doctors to choose their residency positions. So it's giving us as students a disadvantage, especially as osteopathic medical students who are already fighting for their residency positions.
Point of information, Douglas Anderson, PCOM, COSGP. This resolution, like so many other resolutions, really the point of it is to allow the AOA to move forward, working with these other professional organizations to lobby and basically advocate for this position. So they have no control over what Caribbean medical schools do or what private hospitals will do, but basically this allows them to have an official stance so they're able to move forward and advocate for this position on a national and state level.
Danley, TCOM, SOMA. That's all great, and I agree that we should.
What are you rising to do?
I'm more information on that.
So point of information?
Yes. I say that we table this and don't vote on it. And it'd be sent to.
One second. If you want to do that, you'd say I move to table, and then say to what, to when.
Okay. I move to table this because I believe that if you want to
But
combat...
to when? You have to tell us when to table it to.
I don't know. So
You can say indefinitely, which will then basically kill the resolution.
Sorry.
You can say definitively for a specific amount of time, which you can move it to just the end of our meeting here. Those are basically what you can do.
Then I move to table it indefinitely until it's rewritten.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the table is denied.
Okay. Then for a point of information only then. I feel that if you want to combat buying residency slots, then your resolutions should be specific to that. This is a very broad, very generalized statement that can be taken any...
That's not information.
Wait, go ahead. Speak up. Stand up. Speak up.
Our point of order is that information.
Come up to the mic.
Ryan Lesinski, Lee Com, Seton Hill, Soma. Is this information or opinion?
Then I stand in against this resolution.
There we go. Hey, we're all learning. We're all learning. So good job, guys.
Thank you for the help. And now that we all know why I'm against this, I asked the question. I got 3 really great answers, and they all three the same things. Caribbean medical schools buying slots in American hospitals. Great thing to be against. Wrong way to do it, in my opinion. If you want to be against that sort of thing, I don't think this language really gets you there.
For the resolution. Any more against the resolution? Hearing no further debate on the floor, I will call the question. All of those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. This resolution passes. Just because you're in the minority doesn't mean you shouldn't say your opinion loud and proud. Okay? At this point, I bring to the floor for your consideration House Resolution 400. Is your doctor a physician? Resolved that the American Osteopathic Association develop a campaign entitled Is Your Doctor a Physician? And be it further resolved that the Is Your Doctor a Physician campaign consists of but not limited to the following: patient educational posters and pamphlets that can be used in physician offices, billboards, and public service announcements for radio and television. And be it further resolved that the AOA include other physician organizations as participating groups in this campaign as well. Floor is open for debate.
Bridget McElwee, Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, SOMA. I rise in favor of this resolution. I have personally encountered several individuals while working in the clinics over the past 2 years who present themselves as to patients as doctors who are working in such fields as those mentioned in the resolution, such as nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, physical therapists, and others. And we all know that even pharmacists and many other fields now have doctoral degrees that they graduate with and enjoy the title of doctor from time to time. While none of us think that our patients are unintelligent, I think that it's easy to mistake someone else in a long white coat for a physician if they're calling themselves a doctor, and so I think it's appropriate that we educate them so that we can protect their health as well as our profession. Thank you.
Michael Pham, DCOM, Erie, COSGP. Who's paying for this? Like, who's going to pay for these advertisements and for this campaign? Where are funds going to come from? And is this really a priority? If we're physicians and we're treating patients, like, who's going to pay for all of this? This is going to cost a lot of money, right? This doesn't really make sense.
At this point, since it does not speak to any of that, you just have to look at the whereas statements and the result statements and take it for what it is.
I believe
Name and school.
Bridget McAlee, Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine, ACOFP members, those people presenting this resolution, as well as AOA members, I believe all pay dues to be members of those organizations, and I believe that would be where the money would come from.
Tara Hughes, Des Moines University College of Osteopathic Medicine, COSGP. I rise in opposition to this resolution. While I understand why this is important, because I do think that it's important for us, for our patients, to know who's providing care to them. I have also been on the other side as an allied healthcare provider who holds a doctoral degree in another field and have worked with individuals who have misrepresented themselves. First of all, for this resolution, I feel that the audience for this resolution is incomplete. I also feel that it's our responsibility to work with allied healthcare providers to foster a relationship in that we hold each other accountable. So we need to be making sure that those individuals who misrepresent themselves are called out by their peers as well, not only educating our patients, which is also important. Another thing that I feel like this kind of does is if we have this stance, it's almost a knock against other allied healthcare professionals. And we all know that in some rural areas, that's all they have is a PA or a nurse practitioner. And I just don't want us...
Your time has expired.
Lauren Snyder, ASCOM, COSGP. I rise in support of this resolution. As it's already been mentioned multiple times, we are seeing more and more doctorate professionals in the healthcare field. And while sometimes I don't think it's an intentional thing, and they are absolutely entitled to use their earned title as doctor, but I think it might be a misrepresentation of themselves and their abilities and their talents and where their education is. And again, I don't think it's intentional all the time, but I think they need to represent themselves appropriately. So I think there's education on both sides, both for our patient population, but also within the healthcare professionals as well.
Opposed?
Molly Schneider, DMU Com, COSGP. I rise in opposition to this resolution, as I think in many places in the United States we are at a shortage for healthcare providers, especially primary healthcare providers, and having a strong campaign such as this could decrease patient confidence in physician assistants and nurse practitioners and demand to see actual physicians where there actually might be the time or resources for them to see them as often as they would like. Thank you.
Tim Beals, CCOM, SOMA. I rise in support of this resolution. Simply put, one of our biggest professional goals, I feel, is empowering our patients to make well-informed decisions on their health care, and that is exactly what this bill speaks to.
Opposed?
Kevin Cope, LMU Com, COSGP. I agree with my colleague that other professions, they do have doctorate degrees, and that's because they've gone through extra education, and that denotes their education in that field. In addition to rural areas not having access to healthcare as readily as we want it to, those nurse practitioners and physician assistants do provide care in those areas that is needed. And I just think a campaign like this kind of almost alienates those practitioners. In theory, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, we're all going to work together for patient care when we get out into practice for the betterment of the patient. And I just think that this campaign would sort of alienate those professions.
Derek Kirby, CCOM, COSGP. I rise in support of this resolution. I believe the spirit of the resolution and the proposed campaign that's being put together here is not to take away from their title as a doctor. It is simply to educate the patients to who of these doctors are actually physicians. So.
Opposed? Anyone for?
Jimmy DeMeo, Lecom Erie, I'm here on behalf of SOMA. I rise in support of this resolution. The more research I've done on the matter, I've seen that nurse practitioners are pushing for more doctoral rights, and I believe that they do a good job of standing together and unifying their profession, and I feel that this resolution can help unify us as physicians and really push the responsibilities that we have. Opposed?
For?
James Tucker, ATSU KCOM. This is originally came from Missouri, which I'm from as well, and I serve on their House of Delegates and the Board of Trustees. The purpose behind this, we had a number of chiropractors in the state of Missouri who were being referred patients directly from the school. The school would have an injured football player or something like that, and the chiropractor would be the first one to receive the referral from the team coach or administrators or whomever. We actually had the executive director of NAOPS, which is our state organization, actually had a son who tore a rotator cuff, was sent to a chiropractor who sent him to physical therapy, who never discovered the torn rotator cuff. And also, just as a point of information as well, these other professions are developing similar programs to tout their abilities in comparison to doctors. I think it's only fair that we tout our comparisons to them as well.
Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. The resolution passes. Due to time constraints and needing to be done by 8:30, we are only going to allow 5 minutes for the next few resolutions to speed things through. At this point, I bring to the floor House Resolution H208, Study New Methods of Residency Funding. At this time, I open the floor to debate.
Full Paris, WCU-COM, Soma. I have a motion to amend. Line 7, I would like to strike promote and change that to explore.
Is there a second?
James Tucker, ATSU, I second the motion.
We will allow debate for 1 minute.
So the reason we'd like to make this amendment is, though it's important to promote whatever we come up with as a resolution, I think it's important to remain neutral during the process, so we think we should explore new methods, and once we have established those methods, then promote them.
Any further debate on the amendment? Hearing no further debate, I will call the question. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Can you clarify your amendment so that he can just make sure that it's up there correctly?
Explore.
We good? The amendment having passed, we are now discussing the resolution with the amendment at this point. Those in favor of this new resolution for debate? Those opposed?
Brian Losinski, Lecom Seton Hill, Soma. As long as it's only exploring and studying, developing new methods for funding it, I'm supportive of it. I'm supporting of this bill. As mentioned earlier in the evening, we are somewhere 1,500, 2,000 residencies short of what students we put out every year. As long as it's exploring and is brought forth in front of the student body or the AOA before implemented, I support this bill.
Opposed? For the bill as amended.
Ryan Farnsworth, WVSOM, COSGP. Stand in support of this as well. This is talking about paying for residencies. Right now, Medicaid, Medicare, I forget which one pays for most of it, but the federal government's under a huge burden with the
with the price of residencies. And so this is just saying, let's explore other ways of paying for it, whether it's private or commercial. So, I'm for it.
Any against? Anyone for? Hearing no further debate, I will call the question. All those in favor of this resolution as amended, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Because you made an amendment, folks, factual, be ready to go on the House floor and make that amendment on the House floor and support it. A moral and ethical obligation as a representative of your student body, you guys voted that amendment and defended it on the House floor. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, boss. We will now... the lady that made that amendment, can you come up afterwards so we can get all your information? We will now go back and open up debate on the resolution prior to the amendment, because if the amendment is not accepted on the House floor, we then have no stance on the resolution. Okay, so the floor is now open to debate on the original resolution.
Jessica Kisley-Com Bradenton, COSGP. I stand in support of this amendment, even as written.
Nope, we're not on the amendment. We're on the resolution prior to the amendment.
The resolution as written originally. Sorry, apologize. I believe that, as stated previously, this is a mounting issue for our future careers. And no matter if it says promote or explore, I think that we should be in agreement with this resolution because of the fact that we may not have an option. So whether we promote or we explore, promoting new methods of receiving non-governmental funding does not necessarily mean that we are promoting insurance companies or anything like that. It has a very broad-reaching statement. So I don't think that we should slash that just because of that simple word. Thank you.
Kevin Cope, LMUD.com. I move to extend debate by 1 minute just to provide an opposing view.
Is there a second?
Understand, please see 1 second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. The nays have it. Time having expired, all those in favor of this resolution prior to the amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The resolution passes. This time I bring before the floor House Resolution H211, MD options at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine. Resolved that the American Osteopathic Association House of Delegates unequivocally and completely oppose all attempts to establish an MD medical school on the University of North Texas Health Science Center, Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine campus in Fort Worth, Texas, and be it further resolved that the AOA House of Delegates continues its support of the existing Texas state law that protects Texas's only osteopathic medical school, the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, by specifically prohibiting the UNT Board of Regents from granting an MD degree. Floor is open for discussion for 5 minutes.
Matt Danley, TCOM, SOMA, take 2. Speaking on behalf of SOMA, we stand in favor of this resolution as written. The spirit behind this resolution was that having an MD school on top of the DO school on the same campus might pull away precious resources from the DO students to teach the MD students. And there's already arguably a shortage among faculty to teach all the DO students the necessary skills they need. So that was the spirit behind the resolution. For information only, or a point of information, the reason why this school went this route is because they just opened a brand new medical education training building. They can only house about 250 incoming DO students, and we're at that capacity. Now, anybody knows working in education, you can't really build more than you need, so they can't just go and build a new school for DOs when they already have one. So they want to increase enrollment, so that's why they looked at the MD school, and that's why they're trying to go that route. That's it.
Any opposed? Any more for?
Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution passes. I bring to the floor House Resolution H607, the glossary of osteopathic terminology. Debate is open for 5 minutes.
Full Southworth, Unicom, COSGP. I rise in favor of this resolution. The spirit of this resolution as a body of medicine is that we have a lot of terms. Not everybody agrees with them, whether it's a test or it's literature or it's a journal. And what this ultimately does is create a legitimate a body of information, definitions that we can continually to turn to. So through the years, as we mature in medicine, branch of medicine, we can be unified in our information. Thank you.
Against? 4. Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution passes. At this time, I bring to the floor House Resolution H203, Loan Declarant During Residency. Debate is open for 5 minutes.
Mike Erickson, Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine, New York. I rise in support of this resolution. We all know that when you graduate medical school, that's not it. You don't go right into work making whatever you've been making. You go into residency and you continue the education. So it is important that we have the support of our leaders that be to defer the loans and the debt incurred until we are able to pay it back. So thanks.
Opposed? 4. Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution passes. At this time, I will bring to the floor House Resolution 202, Ambulatory-Based Family Medicine Residency Programs. Debate is open for 5 minutes. For the resolution. Anyone against the resolution? Hearing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution passes. This time I bring to the floor House Resolution 412, change of marijuana from DEA Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. At this time I will open the floor for 5 minutes to debate.
James Tucker, ATSU KCOM. I'll try to keep this short. I believe that this is a...
Do you rise in support?
I rise against this resolution. The basis of this resolution is to change the status from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 for studying purposes. I did a little bit of research today, found out the FDA, or the DEA does allow for research of marijuana under a form, a simple form that the researcher would fill out, a DEA Form 225. You can look it up if you want to. The purpose of this is masking what I believe is not an issue within the medical community to be something within the medical community in order to draw support for the legalization of marijuana, and I don't think that's the place of the AOA to make that decision. Thank you.
Opposed? Oh, sorry, 4.
Keegan Rommel, MSU Com, CSGP, I'm speaking for. Clearly there is a demand based on the wording of the resolution for scientific investigation. As discussed previously in the CSGP meeting today, there are many psychoactive drugs that the effects are unknown as to how they work and how they work together. In the whereas statement, line 6, it mentions some drugs that are available for prescription. However, that is a limited number of the psychoactive drugs that are in marijuana, therefore needing more investigation.
Opposed?
Stephen Pinter, PNW UCOM, COSGP. I rise in opposition to this resolution because if marijuana is changed to a Schedule II drug, that will allow anybody who is able to prescribe medications to prescribe this. That goes way beyond physicians. That goes to dentists, optometrists, psychiatrists. And so I think everybody in this room knows people in those different professions that a simple phone call will get them a medication called in without any kind of history or workup. And I see if we were to make it a Schedule II drug, then the drug will be even more abused than it already is.
Point of information.
Torrey University, California, Scott Drew, Torrey University, California, College of Osteopathic Medicine, there we go. Psychiatrists are physicians, for one. Secondly, Schedule II drugs are a controlled substance. The distribution of those substances are not done without a physician visit. For example, a dentist can't give a non-patient a prescription for oxycodone. He has to have in record that that's a patient of his. He has to have at least a consult with that patient.
If you could hurry to the mic, please. Mike Erickson, Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine, Harlem, New York. The question for me is, what are the limitations on researching versus Schedule I, Schedule II? And since this is what the resolution is supporting, are there other ways of getting access to that type of research capabilities without changing the schedule?
Nikhil Mohan, COSGP research representative. According to DEA ruling, it's pretty black and white with Schedule I versus Schedule II. If it's a Schedule I, you cannot participate in any type of medical research with the drug versus a Schedule II where you can get involved with research. But as one of our delegates stated earlier, that you can fill out a DEA 225 form and be participating with medical marijuana research or research in regard to any substance. Douglas Anderson, PCOM. I rise in favor of this resolution for several reasons. The first being that being at Schedule I, although there's a potential to do some research, it is an incredible hindrance. And it's not on the whereas statements, but whereas tens of thousands of people across the country are currently using marijuana in a medical form and have been very, very strong advocates as patients for its importance, especially when taking chemotherapy in regards to reducing nausea. And a point of information, Schedule I controlled substances include things like heroin and ecstasy and LSD, as well as marijuana. And I think that moving to Control 2, it will still be defined as a substance with a high potential for abuse that can lead to psychological or physical dependence. That's
I'm going to extend debate by 5 minutes.
I second that.
At this point, 98% of people in this room have a engagement that they need to get to after this. So we will extend debate for 2 minutes, and that is it. Go.
Okay. And then basically other Schedule II ones, so you guys know, I think that marijuana will be fine in this category. It includes everything from methamphetamine, cocaine, opium, morphine, all Schedule II. I think.
And your time has expired.
Thank you.
Sarah Wolf, Western University, COSGP. I just wanted to let everyone know I'm from the state of California, originally Oregon, and the main research on my campus from the pharmacy college is marijuana and its abuse. So I want you to know that it is being researched out there as is. And coming from a state where marijuana is legal, the abuse rate is so high, it's almost too easy to get your hands on a prescription, and we see that really, really commonly. So I just want to warn everyone out there. Speak against.
Anyone for? Anyone against?
Speaking for.
Go for it.
Scott Drew, Torrey University, California, College of Osteopathic Medicine. Speaking to the Schedule I versus Schedule II, my colleagues spoke mostly to what I plan to say. I just want to put a simple thought out there. If anybody's ever seen a person on chemotherapy and known the feeling that you want to do everything you possibly can for that person to make them comfortable, that it is worthwhile moving a drug which is comparable to the other drugs included in Schedule 2 in order to make research much easier and facilitate gathering information. That's why we're all here. We are students of medicine. We want to know the most we possibly can about everything we can do for our students, for our patients. And that's the goal of this. Moving it to Schedule 2, it still will be a controlled substance.
Okay, your time has expired.
Elizabeth Rourke, TCOM, COSGP. I speak against this. Our school gives us the opportunity to go to the Betty Ford Center. I've been there. I've noticed what we as physicians over time, by allowing lots of things become Schedule 2, the abuse rates have gotten extremely high both for physicians and for the population. And can I continue?
Time having expired, I will now call the question. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to this resolution, please say nay. Nay. Division of the House. All those in favor, please raise your hands very high and keep them high. No bent elbows. Thank you.
All right. Those opposed to the resolution, please raise your hands high. No bent elbows.
The resolution has passed by a vote of 61 to 39. At this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Cole Southworth, Unicom, COSGP, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Bill Lancaster, Georgia PCO, my second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? We are out of time, so we are not going to be debating that resolution. Good job, you guys. This has been absolutely amazing. You are all very well prepared for the House of Delegates. Get out there, be proud, speak strong.
Before you guys leave, if you didn't sign in at the beginning of the Nosc, will you please meet us out in the lobby and sign in so that we can get an accurate count on who was here tonight and make sure that our records are correct. Thank you.
And we need you to register, otherwise you will not get the talking points or, hey, everyone, can I have your attention? Real quick, quiet please. If you did not register prior to coming into this room, you need to go register, otherwise you will not get the sheets with the talking points and the way the entire osteopathic student body feels.
So please go out there and register if you have not. Thank you.
One more thing, if you spoke up quite frequently, please come up and check that I got your name and school and association correct.
And this is for the people online. You also need to register.
Actually, if you spoke up at all, please come and see me.
I can register people up here also to speed things up.
Can you make sure that for tomorrow people address the speaker and don't turn around and address the whole council? Okay, because they'll get